Welcome to Be Home Resources, a place you can depend on for all your home ownership needs. My name is Kathleen Goneau, your real estate concierge, and I'm excited to share with you how to maintain, update, protect your investments. Today, I'm here with Tim Waldron of Angels Painting. Welcome, Tim. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Glad to be here.
Tim, tell me a little bit about Angels Painting. How did Angel get started?
Well,
because there's really an angel, right?
There is an angel. There's Angel Senior started Angels Painting 24 years ago. He emigrated from Chile and was in the painting business, and so he decided to start Angels Painting 24 years ago. And his son, Angel Jr., upon graduating Boston College, approached his dad. His dad approached him about buying the business. And awesome. So Angel Jr. took it over 6 years ago and has been running it ever since.
That's awesome. And you're vice president?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit today. We are in New England,
yes.
And many of our houses require painting frequently, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the exterior of the house today for the purpose of today's show. What type of paint is best for exterior when you're painting the exterior of a house? Well,
acrylic paints, they can be applied to wood, stucco surfaces, just about metal, and just about any type of surface. Of course, when you want some durability, an oil-based paint for decking and trim, it's exposed to the elements, and if you want a really hard surface, especially for the flooring, an oil base might be applied.
Wow. So the average homeowner here not understanding, like, I have to buy different kinds of paints for different areas. Can you just paint over the previous paint? This is the big question, especially when I'm working with homeowners buying a home. Can I just paint over it, or do we need to strip it?
You can paint right over it. It depends on the previous paint that is on there, the type of paint. So you want to know what surface is there previously, whether it's acrylic or oil-based. When it's, of course, you want to remove any cracking or loose paint before you paint over it. You may, in some cases, just a good clean surface with a nice base to it, you can just paint right over it with, and you don't need to use any primer. In some cases, you will need some primer as well.
So tell me more about that. What is the primer going to do?
It actually helps the paint adhere to the previous surface on there, and helps it cure itself. If we're scraping down to bare wood and we're removing some paint, we're on the bare wood, we always spot prime those spots first, and then we put 2 coats of paint, and sometimes it may require 3 coats.
So 2 to 3 coats to be fair. And how long does, in New England, how long does a rush paint application
that's a good
last?
question. It will really depend on the environment that it's in, the exposure to the sun, trees, where you are. Even in New England can be quite different. Down the Cape, it's salty air. But anywhere from 5 to 10 years, a good paint will last. And a stain, although cheaper, does not last as long as a paint, and may require some reapplication in a 4-year period.
That's interesting, because when you think about the difference between a paint and a stain, I'd almost think that the stain would last longer than a paint.
What it'll do is it'll start to fade. You'll see some fading, especially on the sunny side of the home, but it won't crack. It'll just give you more of a fade, whereas a paint will start to crack. But that harder surface helps it, almost that acrylic enamel. I almost consider it like a fingernail polish. It will adhere to that house and protect it from the elements, especially in New England. We have driving rain, driving snow, so paints do last longer.
So, every summer I see the college painters come out of school and make their rounds in the neighborhood. What is the best time of the year to actually paint the exterior of a home?
Well, in New England, it's March to October. We really like to see it above 50 degrees consistently overnight to have the paint cure. weather patterns changing, we are finding ourselves painting. If the weather's permitting, we'll paint right up until Thanksgiving, and we may start projects depending upon the rainy season earlier in the season. But March to October are the ideal times in New England for sure.
Okay, and that will give you a better end product and more life.
Oh, for sure. Yep. And it's all, when you say, can you paint over existing paint, in our industry, the professionals know it's really all in the prep. So what goes into preparing the surface, removing anything loose, caulking the seams, that leads into also, can you paint over vinyl? I know most people always ask that question.
That was one of my questions because, working with homeowners, they are, like, I hate the color of the vinyl. I'm going to have to re-vinyl the house. And so can you paint over vinyl?
You can, 100%. You can almost paint any surface today. Again, an acrylic base will paint right over that. Bear in mind that a lot of times with vinyl, you might not be able to choose the color. So going to a darker color may absorb some heat and cause the plastic to warp, which will buckle on the paint and cause that some issues too. And a funny side note, because a neighbor down the street had just sided their house a few years back and chose the same color and shutter scheme as our home. And my wife had said, boy, why did they pick the same color? Can we paint?
That happens all the time, right?
Can we paint it? And I made the mistake of saying yes. Oh, well, we can paint the vinyl. And I have not heard the end of that. And I said, wouldn't you rather take a trip than paint the vinyl side?
Yeah, just live with us.
But yes, you can paint vinyl for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some of them, I do see mistakes. I call it house crying. I've seen people paint shutters.
Yes.
And next thing you know, they've got streams of stains underneath the shutter coming down. Looks like the house is crying.
Right.
What causes that?
It could be they applied it at the wrong time of year, didn't give it enough time to really cure. If it's super, super hot and they decide to paint the shutters, they should try to do it in a cool, dry area. Maybe in the garage area, we'll stage the shutters. We give them a proper time to dry and cure before we'll go hang them back on the house. But if you have a really hot 100-degree moisture day, it may have not cured. And then if you have some rain, it's going to drive it right down onto the house.
Yeah. So we deal with a lot of antiques, and with antiques sometimes come the lead paint. What is the best way to deal with lead paint?
Well, you have to make sure you have a lead certified contractor for sure. There's techniques that they have to abide by, spreading the tarps out, covering beyond the area where the chips and the dust can get down. But you have to remove all loose pieces for sure, and dust. Clean the house very good. And we use what's called an encapsulation method. It's an encapsulating type of paint to cover over the lead paint. You can strip it.
So you can do that
You
now.
can, yes.
I know before they recommended stripping.
Stripping the whole thing down. And of course, it's possible. It's just a lot more work to do. But one thing...
environmentally, I'm not sure it's better.
Actually, it's not actually to environment. You're creating more dust, more chips, everything. So encapsulating it is very safe, and it keeps the dust and the chips from spreading and becoming airborne. And one thing I bear in mind that when you strip it, you have a nice, clean, smooth surface, and you're starting fresh. When you paint over it, lead paint's very thick, so you'll see that divot. So I try to set expectations that if you're right up against the house, you're going to see the divot go in. We try to use a high build, thicker type of product that helps fill in that divot area, but you will see a little bit of divot. From the street side, when you're looking straight on, nobody really notices that. It's only when you get right up to the house. But setting the expectations is huge with the homeowner, because they may think that they were going to see a completely smooth surface if you're just painting over it, but that's not the case.
Yeah, as a former antique owner, nothing is perfect in an
That's
antique.
never perfect in the older homes in New England.
It just is not. So let's talk about method of painting, because I, have seen homes being sprayed versus brush and roll. What is the best method for applying?
Well, professional painters will tell you, there's some professional painters say, oh, you can spray it and it's just as good as brush and roll, but the fact is that's not true. Spraying is, a lot of professional spray, we spray as well. If you have a flat surface, a stucco wall, it's much faster. It does use more paint, but it is a faster process, and you can do it interior and exterior. Of course, you'll have to cover all the windows if it's really particular not to overspray something. But when you want consistency, brush and roll on the wall always looks cleaner, and it lasts a little longer as well.
Yeah. How long should I call if I want to get my house painted? Because I know in today's world, it's hard to get things scheduled.
It is. Obviously, wintertime, some of the crew, we run probably half the team in the wintertime because when we're doing an exterior project, we put more people on it. But giving them enough notice, a couple of weeks notice, a good quality painter should be able to get in there. But if you're looking for a summer project, you might want to book a little bit earlier, even sometimes previous. We'll get a lot of calls in the fall to come look at a property to be the first one on the schedule. Because the summer is all predicted on weather as well. We can't paint in the rain. So one of the things we do is when we start a project, we don't leave the project. We stay with that home. We don't start another project at the same time. But weather permitting, if we have a very rainy season, those projects can continue to be pushed back and drag on. So if you have a large exterior, you want to prep for it. Have them take a look at it. If they take a look at it in the fall, have them take another look at it in the spring. There may be some changes to the property that have occurred over the wintertime that you may have missed. So, so just re-walking the property and setting some expectations before you start the project. But give painters a good amount of time depending upon the size of your property as well.
Okay. And can we talk about decks a little bit? Because I'm planning a deck project, and I'm really confused as to what kind of product I want to build my deck. But if I were to go with a wood product, my concern is, how do I choose the stain? What's happening with stains with decks today?
Well, some trends are still the natural colors, but we're seeing a lot of grays work their way into the stain on the deck because stain comes in many colors, not just natural. We're seeing the browns, the grays, especially down in the coastal areas. You might even see some blue staining over along the ocean. They want to kind of pull that ocean view in. But reds even, the cedars, the reds.
And that's what I remember, when I think of staining, I see that red color and I go, ooh, I don't like that. And so when talking with the contractor about the deck, and the different products, I do like the gray look. I think it fits better with my house and what aesthetically it's going to look better. Right.
Yeah, the neutral colors are... Well, grays to the eye will pull out different things to different people. On an interior, depending upon the light, some people may see a slight pink, some may see that light Nantucket green or even a blue. So it will pull the colors from your furniture. So if you have a blue furniture that may be like this carpet, it's going to pull the blue out of that gray in the wall. So,
interesting.
But for an outside deck, it really looks nice. It can give it like a whitewashed look. But again, if the people will ask me, why do I have to stain my deck every year? If there's no roof over it,
that was my next question.
There you go. If there's no roof over it and it's getting hit by the sun all the time, every other year is fine to put a nice protective coat. Paints will actually, again, going back to that hard surface that it creates, that acrylic, will protect the surface more, even though the stain penetrates and becomes part of the wood. So if it's pressure treated, you want a stain. It will absorb into the wood. But the difference...
What if we have like mahogany decking or a different kind of wood other than
I prefer to stain those and use a product called paraffin that works on those. It allows them to expand and contract, and we don't want to block up the gaps between the boarding and the decking as well.
Right.
Yep.
Wow. So this little deck project that I have is just kind of like going on and on.
Sometimes people say, I'll tell them, well, now that you've decided on us, that was the easy part, but now you have to pick out the colors, and boy,
That is hard.
it's very difficult for people. So,
Yeah.
but if you were looking at deck colors, again, it goes with the grays, the browns, the reds, and the natural colors that people want to just use the wood that's naturally as it is with the grain.
Again, being you just mentioned some trends for colors. Being in the real estate industry, a lot of times we're talking to the owner about the front door. Is there any science, or have you heard of things that work really well for front doors?
It will depend on the home. So
Yeah.
like a traditional home or a period home, blues work really well for a period home or even a modern home. So blue is probably one of the top colors right now for a front door, believe it or
Really?
not. It's calming. It's cool. It adds curb appeal. So front door really does matter, especially to a real estate agent. You may suggest to the homeowner to change the color of the door. It hasn't been proven out, but they say black adds value to your house, and everybody seems to do that. And I think it's because it has a richness to it. It works with a traditional home and a modern home. So the blue, the black. People are actually getting very bold with the front door. So you didn't really see orange or yellow, but because we're doing the house in these neutral colors that you're seeing today, the grays, the greens, the lighter greens, and even the white, having a nice front door, that curb appeal, it stands out. So yellow is really an inviting color to people. Mine is a maroon, which is a red, which they say is energy and again, inviting to come on in. So,
And the door does not have to match the shutters.
it does not. No, that's a myth. You definitely don't have to. You really want to have that be the piece that sets the tone when you're entering the home.
Yeah.
So if you have that different color, it really invite someone in and say, here we are. And you want that homeowner even a potential buyer to say, this is my future home and I love the color of that door. I wouldn't have thought of painting it yellow, but now I love it. And in fact, Angel's front door is yellow. So
Is it
yeah,
really?
it is.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because when we're looking at different colors and ideas, I didn't actually notice it. So I sent out something to all of our employees and I said, what color is your front of your door? And he said, well, mine's yellow. And we all were thinking about, what does that mean about you? So
That's funny. I would imagine color has so much emotion that comes with it.
It does.
And
It does.
we express with color.
I'm sure you're seeing it too, that even the exterior of houses, the black and the dark charcoals, the grays have always been there and the whites, but we're seeing, and it looks really sharp when you paint your house.
Especially some of the contemporaries, and a lot of the window frames are now darker color versus the white. So it's bringing us into those kinds of color tones, more naturals.
I agree. Yep.
I have heard a lot of things about from homeowners about nightmares about hiring a professional. What should a homeowner consider when hiring a painter? What are some questions they should ask them?
They should check on their credentials. Do they have what's called, in Massachusetts, we have an HIC license, which is a home improvement contractor license, which means we're certified by the state that we have insurance liability, workman's comp for our employees should they fall off a ladder. And if the work does not occur, it's guaranteed.
Right.
So that's one thing, checking their credentials. How long have they been in business? Do they know the difference between an oil base and an acrylic? Because a lot don't. And if you just paint over an oil-based trim, you could take your fingernail and it'll peel right off. But it's amazing how many times we go back to a house and we realize that they did not properly prime this or sand it or get it ready for the next application, depending upon
I would imagine that's how a professional can maybe save some money, is to skip a couple steps and then...
They can. Sometimes they mix primer with the paint so that they may only have to apply one more coat.
Right.
And in the infinite wisdom of one of our painters, he's been with us for over 15 years, he said, why would we do that? Now the primer is only doing 50% of its job. And I said, do you mind if I use that? You know,
That's
so
great.
it is
a
good.
great
I'm like, no,
observation.
I want the primer to be 100% of its job. And then if I need to add a third layer to cover a difficult color because it's bleeding through, I will. But make sure that the contractors are reputable. Do they have references? Of course, we're going to pass references of people who like our work, but have a portfolio of some of the work that they've done before. Do they have experience with high-end paints, Holland lac, or fine European paints for front doors? It's a different way to apply those if they don't have experience in them. One thing, do they have their own carpenter team? Because
That's a good point, yeah.
Very few exterior jobs that we have that we don't have to replace some trim, a windowsill, and to have them all of a sudden come about that. Now they have to hire another team out. We incorporate that in. We show you what we think needs to be replaced. But sometimes after pressure washing and scraping, we run across a few more items, but our team is already there doing some minor repairs or some major repairs, and just to have them on site doing that, I could say, hey, add in that windowsill, and it's very minimum. We're already there on site. We're not calling another carpenter team back to do that. And I would say years of experience of their painters. A lot of our painters have been with us for well over 12 years. Our carpenter team's been together for 15 years. So having that experience and knowing the older home, as you said, the antique, as opposed to the newer home. Newer homes have, their trim is pretty standard. You could go to Home Depot, Lowe's and get that trim. An older home, you may have to have a carpenter team customize and do some custom build. And we've had to do that in quite a few applications.
Yeah, especially in New England where we have such depth in our age of our homes.
We do. And you can't, and that was custom milled trim on a lot of houses, and they just don't sell that. So can we mill some pieces that look very close? Yes, for sure, that you wouldn't even notice from the street because you can't buy that trim and that type of thickness of wood as well. Right.
Wow. So just in summary, when we're painting the exterior of a home, we have to think about all of the prep, which includes, tell me again, the power washing.
Yes, pressure washing, spreading your tops so that you collect loose chips so there's less cleanup at the end.
Right.
Spot priming as well. We remove sand down loose pieces. Caulking all the edges is big. Yeah. Filling in the gaps around it stops bugs from entering, it stops moisture. So we caulk all edges, all trim, everything. But the proper preparation is really what's going to make the paint last the longest. So
protect your house.
And protect your house, getting a nice clean surface for sure.
Yeah. Well, this has been really informative, Tim.
Thank you so much, Kathleen.
And I know you guys work in Marlborough as well as many other areas in the area, and your reputation really stands out. I work with a lot of different painters and contractors through my business over the last 30 years, and I haven't been able to find anybody say anything bad about Angel's Painting. So I really appreciate you being one of our resources.
Thank you.
And for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today as well. If you have any tip ideas for topics for us, or just simple questions about your home and how to take care of it, please email us at the email address on the screen. We want to earn the right to be your real estate concierge. So I'm going to invite you to join Tim and myself and all the other resources that we have on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Be Home Resources. Again, I am Kathleen Goneau, and I am signing off for today. Be well and live well.